One of the first things I do when I come up to a new mixing console to mix for a worship band is I want to have a clear plan and strategy in place for how I am managing signal flow from my individual channels to my buses or groups, which then sends audio to my main left-right mix or matrix mixes. This technique is very simple, and it's one little trick I use to elevate my mix to sound a little bit more balanced and professional. If you try this out, I would start with the configuration of channels and buses that I'm using here on this console, and then you could get more complex with the number of buses you use in the future. So here on my Allen Heath Qu-5D, I have my layers laid out here. This first layer is primarily my input channels for my drums, my guitars, keys, 2 vocals. I have some custom faders here for my effects. I'll talk about that later. Down here is the next layer of channels. I didn't customize this. You actually see the vocals are duplicated here. That's one thing that's great about this console is you can change this fader layout however you would like. For me, I prefer hanging out on one fader bank 99% of the time during a service if possible. So down here on B, additional input channels. Down here on C, by default, it shows a few more stereo inputs, USB input. We have our buses now for our effects buses. So this is where we're going to send different channels. If we want to add reverb or delay to them, they're going to go to these buses. And then we have our returns. This is how the effects like reverb and delay get back into the main mix or whatever mix we want to send them to. Then we have some DCAs over here. We can control groups of channels. On our final layer, we have our mix buses. So you can use mix buses for auxiliary monitor mixes if you'd like. You can also use them as group buses. That's what I'm doing here. In an ideal world, we wouldn't have to use up any of our mix buses for monitoring, even though you could do that here, but it's going to limit you in how much you can use these buses for mixing purposes, which I'm going to show you in this video. So if you go here to what would be mix 9, 10, 11, and 12, I have 3 buses right now that I'm using. This is a very simple layout. I wanted to group 3 categories of channels. The first one is our vocalists. The second one is our entire band. The third one is crowd. You could break this up more if you wanted to group just your drum set together or maybe guitars and keys and tracks. You can start using up additional buses. It's going to give you just additional layers of control in your mix. But with more buses comes greater complexity, and I want to discourage you from adding too much complexity to the layout of your console. Finally, down here, you can see I've got my main left-right mix bus here that I have muted, and then we have our stream matrix, and then we have an additional matrix here if I wanted to use that for something else. So I already told you I want to have 3 groups. Sometimes they're called subgroups for my vocals, my band, and then my crowd mics. It's going to allow me to apply additional EQ, compression, and perhaps effects to each of those groups, in addition to the EQ and compression that was applied at the individual channel level. Before we continue on with the video, if you'd like personalized help setting up the right mixing solution for your church and implementing a custom show file like the one I'm building here, you should go to churchfront.com and check out our premium membership. It's a great way to get access to all of our online training and courses. You can also talk with a real coach on a weekly basis. If you have to make any gear upgrades, we can help design the right solution specific to your church. And then we have a variety of options for every budget on how you can get those solutions installed as quickly as possible. So go to churchfront.com and join Churchfront Premium today, or just reach out to us if you have any questions. We can tell you more. So I'm going to go here into Setup, and under the Config tab, I'm going to make sure that the mixes I want to use for my groups, which are 9, 10, 11, they are set to stereo. We want to have a nice full stereo mix. That's how we listen. That's how things are going to sound the best. And you can flip any of these buses on this console from mono to stereo. You can see mix 1 and 2 are mono. That could come in handy if you're trying to create monitor mixes for your band and you want to split them out. But keep in mind, when you go from stereo to mono, the listening experience is not going to be nearly as good. So I'd recommend having enough buses to keep everything in stereo if possible. So mix 9, 10, and 11 are now in stereo mode. Another setting to look out for when you're setting this up is once you've set your mixes to be stereo on the mixes that you want for your groups, you need to make sure those buses are actually configured to work in group mode. So I have mix 9, 10, and 11 for vocal, band, and crowd in group mode here because I just want the channel signal to go from the channel straight to the groups. I'm not going to alter the level of that signal for these individual groups. It's really just going to be based on the main fader level that we're going to set here with our main channel strips. That's going to go into the group so I can add on the additional EQ compression before it gets sent to the main mix. So that's another setting you want to adjust there. Now, if I go down to my vocal bus right here, if I look at the processing, here is where I can add on additional EQ. They actually have graphic EQ, you've got the regular PEQ, and then you've got the compression that we can put on this bus as well. So you can see I'm adding additional compression to my vocalists here. This can often kind of form a type of glue to the vocal channels to help them, I think, just kind of stick together a little bit better, sound even more consistent in how they sit in the rest of the mix. Same thing here with our band. We've got a separate bus to process our band, and then our crowd mics. I actually added some EQ to the crowd mics, and I also have some EQ and compression on the channels as well. So let's go to our vocal channel here. And if I go to my routing page from the channel level, this is where I can go to the mix tab and say, I want to send this channel to my vocal group only. And then from the vocal group, it's going to be sent to the main mix. So if I go to my other tab on routing, which is very easy to navigate on this console, you'll see that I actually turned off the main left-right output for this channel here. So the audio has to go through the vocal group first before it actually gets sent to the main mix. Let's go to another instrument channel. I'll go to my acoustic guitar. Here you'll see I disabled the main output on the acoustic guitar, and then I have it on only for the band group. So I did that for my drums, my guitars, my keys. They are only going to the band group. I disabled the main mix there. So now when I go back to my groups, if I select my vocal group, and now I can go to the main mix tab right here, and we can see that this group has main mix enabled. So this is how the vocals are getting to the main mix. When you start doing this, you'll just want to be aware that if you disable the main left-right output from a channel, it's not going to be going to the main mix. You're not going to hear it. Even if the channel fader is up, it looks like it's unmuted. It could be muted at the next layer where the bus is, and that's where the signal is being sent to the main mix. So I know it's tempting to just dive into the channels and the processing here on the console before you get going, but I highly recommend that you take some time to think about your strategy for how you're routing channels to buses, then to your mains. Mixing drums. I'll admit that we're cheating a little bit here because we do have an electric drum kit. It makes mixing drums so much simpler. So when you start looking at the setup that I have here on these channels, I'm not really having to add a lot of processing to this mix. We'll get an acoustic drum set up someday for you guys and mix acoustic set with microphones and how do you mitigate things like the noise bleeding into those microphones. So when you have an electric kit like this and all the channels are broken out, it's just very easy to control and very simple to process. So here's what the drums sound like, kind of the dry sound coming in. And the key things that I did here is I just made sure on the source page here for my preamp, everything has a good, strong signal. So when you see the signal coming in, it's metering around 0 right here on the console, and nothing is clipping into the red. You got to have a good source tone by setting the preamps at the right level. That's the knob here at the top left of the console. The next step is you could add a gate to each of your drums. This is especially useful if you're using microphones and you're trying to isolate that microphone sound from capturing all the other drum mics that are on that drum set. In this case, I don't really need a gate because, again, if you were to listen to these drums, that's the kick. Because it's an electric kit, all you hear is the kick drum on the kick channel, so it's nice and clean. Up next, we would add some EQ. Often I would start with my high-pass filter here so I could enable my high-pass filter. And then I like how there's a dedicated knob to the filter here on the console right by my gain, because that often is the second step of how I process a channel. And I can go in here and I can cut out the unnecessary frequencies. I could see here on the RTA meter that there's not really much information down below this portion here of the frequency spectrum, so I can just cut that out. Up next on the kick drum, I then just added some compression. So you can see here a little bit of light compression. I think this drum has power to it. It is cutting through the mix just fine. So dynamically, I'm not having to worry too much about it, but let's listen. If I want to have a little more consistency to the dynamics of that kick drum, I'm going to lower the threshold of the compressor so it starts to even out the peaks of the sound a bit more, but then I'm going to then add makeup gain down here, so it's gonna elevate the quieter parts of the sound of the kick drum, so then it just sounds more consistent across the board, even if the drummer plays a little harder or a little softer. So that's a nice little trick with compression. So when you're mixing electric kit like this, you'll see on my snare, I've got some light EQ here. I like to add a little bit of girth to that snare to have a little bit more low end in the low mids. Our toms. That low tom on the F note sounds pretty incredible. For the overhead mics on this electric kit, I like to just bring down some of the harshness around 4,000 to 5,000 hertz here, and then maybe add some compression as well, just to really help tone it down when he really starts getting into those cymbals. It's not going to overwhelm the mix, but it's just going to have kind of a nice wash to it. So let's go ahead and bring that down. And having like a medium attack time or maybe a little slower attack time, so we still hear the attack of the cymbals, but then it quickly kind of clamps down and removes a lot of that harshness. My next tip for making your drum set sound good is just adding some verb to your snare drum. Having a dry snare versus a snare drum that kind of gives you some more better sense of space, I think that makes a huge difference with your drum mix. So down here, I actually have a reverb. So what's happening is if I go to my snare channel, if I go to routing, you're going to see here on the effects outs, I sent it to effects 2 on the console. And then if I go to my effects 2 here, you're going to see this is my snare verb. I've got a 2-second decay, 15 millisecond pre-delay. I also have pretty aggressive high pass and low pass filters on each end of the frequency here. I feel like when you have verbs, you don't want a lot of high frequencies or a lot of low frequencies. It really makes a mess of the mix. So here's what it sounds like. So that reverb sounds pretty horrible by itself, but then when you add it to the actual dry sound of the snare from the channel, it sounds pretty great. If I take it out, sounds like you're in a tiny little room with a drum set. Now to just add some space to the drums. It just makes them sound nice and big. So that's a quick tip for just making your drum set sound better with a little bit of snare verb. Let's dive into the bass guitar. Let's add some compression to it. It's a great sounding bass guitar. Nice strong signal. Not a whole lot I need to do to that bass. Let's listen to it now. With my acoustic guitar, I like to have pretty aggressive compression. I like to have a low pass and high pass, even the high pass, because I just don't need all of that high energy and jangly sound from the acoustic in the mix here, especially when it's with a full band. And then the compressor really just helps smooth it out. This is going to sit kind of towards the back of the band. It's not a lead instrument. It's essentially a glorified shaker type of instrument, right? And I don't even like to have the high frequencies you oftenly get with the shaker. I just want it to feel that chugga, 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 that kind of soft rhythm in the background. So here's kind of what that sounds like. That's without the compression. Electric guitar, it's a great sounding guitar. The gain's good. I add some compression to it to smooth it out a little bit. I panned it to the left, and on my keys, I'm actually going to pan those to the right. Electric guitar and keys, one sign of having great musicians as a guitarist and a keyboardist is that you don't have to do a whole lot to their channels to make them sound, the tone sound good of it. They're sending you something that's quality already, and then normally I might add like a high pass filter to it and a little bit of compression, but this is a very simple mix that we're building right here. All right, so let's listen to our keyboard. The way I like to use compression is if I want to hear something stick out a little bit more, I'm going to slow down its attack time, but I'm still going to have that threshold be a little aggressive sometimes and have quite a bit of gain reduction, especially when they are hammering away. That just really helps control the sound. So I think actually attack time is probably one of the key parameters after threshold. Ratio is also pretty important. They're all important, but I think attack time can get overlooked sometimes when you're setting compression, and it's just a really great way to be like, okay, I don't want it to be louder. I just want to hear a little bit more attack. Then slow down that attack time to allow the transient of the sound to come through, and it's going to just kind of pop in the mix a little bit better for you. So notice so far kind of where my levels are at here. Kick drum is sort of the foundation of levels in my mix. I want it to be nice and strong, a little bit lower with the snare. The rest of the drum kit kind of gradually descends. Didn't really do that on purpose, but to me, cymbals like a hi-hat and overheads, those can just kind of chill out a little bit, stay back in the mix. Then we've got our bass, which is also a foundational instrument. We want that to be nice and strong. Acoustic, I have that quite a bit lower compared to my electric guitar and keys. I like this balance. This is where it gets down to subjectivity and personal preference on the mix. Lead vocals. These are probably the most important channels on your console. This is what, again, you want to make sure you get it right here. You actually want to get it right at the source. Make sure they're singing into the mic nice and strong. They're giving a good, strong source tone to work with. So that's what I have here on this male vocalist channel. Plenty of signal coming in. I don't have any gate applied. I could clean up the mix a little bit, but if I don't have to use a gate, I'm not going to. There's not a ton of stage volume in this scenario because we have an electric drum kit. So let's listen to the EQ. Let me go ahead and disable the EQ for you, and now let's listen to it without any EQ. Let's take the compression off as well. So here's kind of the raw, dry mix.
His name is Jesus Christ, our God. Look to the left. His name is Jesus Christ, our God. His name is Jesus Christ, our God. Look to the Lamb.
So adding EQ.
See the Son of God, the Savior crucified.
On his voice, I had some harshness up here around 4 or 5K. I wanted to cut down some boxiness. I wanted to take out at 500, some muddiness down at 200. I have my high pass filter. Pretty happy with that. Let's add in the compression as well. I'm going to go to a different place where this vocalist is actually leading the song. I think that's an important thing when you're dialing him in. Do it in a portion where that particular vocalist is actually leading something, not singing harmony.
You're the God of salvation. Hey, you're the great I am. You're the Alpha Omega. We love to bring you praise, praise, praise.
So I like to be pretty aggressive when they are singing loud. I want to see the reduction down to 10 or even sometimes 15 decibels of gain reduction at the channel level here. And then I'll add a little bit more at the group level here in a moment. So let's hear that again.
Praise, praise.
No EQ or compression.
Oh, praise, praise, let everything that has breath praise, praise, let everything that has breath praise.
This is another place where I think attack time is important on vocals to allow the consonants of these words to come through so you can actually hear what they're saying or singing. But then again, just clamping down on it with the threshold here to come down pretty aggressively. But then you got to add makeup gain. And my warning there is just be aware if you're having to add a ton of makeup gain, you could run into some feedback problems if your system isn't really optimized for that much makeup gain. So keep those things in mind. It's kind of a give and take on each step of the processing here. Let's go back to the next vocalist.
His name is Jesus Christ our God. Look to the left.
What's also nice about the compressor is for the vocalist, when you have that makeup gain going on there, it's going to help boost the vocalist in the quieter parts of a song. Again, feedback can always be a threat to this. You want to be careful about how much gain you add to it, but the goal of a compressor is to make the quieter parts sound louder and the louder parts sound quieter, so it sounds nice and smooth dynamically.
See the Son of God, the Savior crucified. He was and is to come. He will return to shout of glory. Oh.
So now let's add some reverb to our vocalist. So what I did here, if I go to my routing on the channel, my effects outputs, I have my vocalist. They're actually going to both reverb and delay. So we'll talk about both effects here. Effects 1 is reverb. Effects 2 is snare reverb. Effects 3 is vocal delay. So then if I go to my effects setup, you're going to see here that under effects 1, this is what this effect looks like. This is what the EQ looks like. Here's the settings. I've got 38 milliseconds of pre-delay, 1.86 seconds of decay time. I'm trying to take out the high frequencies and the low muddiness here. If I go to my delay, I've got a stereo delay, and I actually have it to be dotted eighth notes, and then I can tap the tempo of the song. So let's go ahead and add both of these effects in.
He was and is to come.
So that's what the delay sounds like, and it obviously sounds weird by itself, but it's very kind of muted, kind of sounds muddy. But again, you want the dry vocal to be nice and clear popping through the mix, and then the delay kind of sounds like it's in the back of the mix and kind of filling this larger space, and that's where it kind of sounds magical. You add in the delay in those key moments at the end of a big phrase where you know there's also going to be a bit of a pause in the music or in the phrase of the melody, so that you can kind of hear it just kind of reverbing or echoing throughout the space. Let me go back to that little spot there just so you can hear it one more time. Right here. And then I pretty much immediately, I'll just bring the delay down. I think the delay, if you're going to keep it on, it's going to be nice and just kind of quiet and subtle in the background. You almost can't hear it. But then on those key moments, that's when you can add it in. So that is our mix of the worship band here. It's a relatively small, simple band. We don't have a ton of channels we're working with here, but they're really good musicians. It sounds nice and full. They don't even have any backing tracks in this mix. They were playing to a click. I didn't set that channel up in here, but this is what you can produce when you capture good source tone and then you just have some simple processing happening with some good EQ and some good compression on a console like this one. You can create an incredible mix. Let's go listen to our crowd mics now. So with my crowd mics, again, I'm just taking out a lot of high and low frequencies here, and then I'm adding some compression to them to smooth them out. So we actually have stereo crowd mics, and then we have a center crowd mic. So we've got 2 channels worth. This one's stereo, this one's mono. So here's what the stereo one sounds like. Up until this point, you actually couldn't hear the crowd mics in the mix because of the way I have them routed. So if you actually go to the crowd mics and I go to my routing setup here, if I go to mix, You'll see I have them enabled only for the crowd group right here. It's disabled for our mains. So I don't want to send my crowds to my main mix in the room because it's going to cause feedback issues. It's going to sound weird. That's not what crowd mics are for. Crowd mics are really for your stream mix to add more room sound and ambient sound to that mix, and it sounds really great for your online listeners. So if I go to my crowd bus right here, or my subgroup, you'll see here I also have it disabled in the main left to right from this group. The only place it's going is my stream matrix. Remember, matrices are like buses, but for buses. So you could take multiple bus mixes like the ones we have here and then forward those into your matrix mix. So what I did is I'm actually sending my vocals and my band are both going to the matrix mix for the stream as well as the main left-right mix. So that's how we're getting vocals and band to our speakers in the room. But then for my crowd mics, I'm only sending them to my stream mix that you see right here. So now I'll go ahead and solo our stream mix for you so you can hear the difference. Crowd mics only. No crowds. So now our online listeners and viewers are going to be able to hear that energy that's in the room from the crowd mics as well. So once I've set up all of my individual channels and I'm happy with the processing at a channel level, then I can also come to my bus level and make a few tweaks. So what I can do here is, like, let's say for my band mix, I want to add a little bit more room for where the vocals are sitting here, kind of in the high mid area to let the vocals cut through a little bit better. I could cut out a little bit of that area from my band group to then leave more room for the vocals coming through here. So let's kind of like mess around with that a little bit. This is where it gets really subtle, but it gives you that additional control. Pretty much allows you to start mastering your mix in real time when you have these additional layers of buses going on here. And what's cool with this console, you could also add some deep plugins to it and have even more advanced capability here. If I go to the add-ons section, you could see there's like tube compressors and limiters and lots of cool different tools that you can add to it, especially dynamic EQs. It'd be cool to add some of this because then it's just kind of in real time mixing and making these adjustments to each of the channels or the buses that you apply them to. So this little console can get really powerful in how you want to refine the mix. But I wanted to show you in this video my philosophy of how I set up the console for worship band, how I'll go do some processing, and how if you have a great source tone, if you follow some basic rules of thumb with EQ and compression, you're going to be on your way to having an incredible mix. This was for our Churchfront conference, by the way. It just, man, brings tears to my eyes thinking about how fun that was. So that's how I go about building a simple, clean, and effective mix for my worship band using the Allen Heath Qu-5D. Let me know what thoughts and questions you have down below in the comments. And if you have any requests for future videos on mixing for your church, let me know those ideas down below. Who knows, it might show up here on the channel. If you would like Churchfront to visit your church and help you on your next AV project, go to churchfront.com and you can reach out to us there. And finally, if you want our complete list of recommended gear, check out the Churchfront Toolkit down below this video. I'm going to list out my ideal package of this console with the accessories that would go with it, and we can also help you purchase and acquire that console through Churchfront as well to help you get up and running with it as quickly and easily as possible. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.